You say you want inner strength, not the kind that makes noise, not the kind that wins arguments or impresses strangers. You mean the kind that remains when the room changes, when the phone vibrates, when the plan collapses, when someone disapproves, when your body is tired, when the future feels uncertain. You want to become unshakable. Notice the first tension. You want to be unshaken, yet you still expect the world to stop shaking you. You want calm, but you negotiate with events. You want steadiness, but you place conditions on it. Inner strength begins when conditions end. A strong mind does not demand a gentle day. It does not require perfect timing, cooperative people, or certain outcomes. It does not beg life to be arranged around its comfort. It looks directly at what is happening and asks one question and then asks it again until the question becomes a habit. What is within my control? Most people do not lack strength. They leak it. They give it away in small payments all day long. A look from someone else, a message unanswered, a delay, a mistake, a memory, a rumor about the future. They pay attention to things that cannot obey them, and then they feel weak when those things refuse. They call this weakness anxiety, stress, tension, distraction, but it is mostly a confusion about ownership. You own your judgments. You own your choices. You own the direction of your attention. You own the willingness to act according to reason, even when desire complains. You do not own outcomes. You do not own other people's minds. You do not own the weather of a day or the economy of a year or the timing of good news. You do not own the body's perfect performance or the world's fairness. When you demand ownership of what is not yours, you make yourself dependent. Dependence feels like fragility. So you begin here. Inner strength is not a feeling. It is not confidence. It is not a mood that arrives when you have slept well. Inner strength is a form of discipline. It is the discipline of perception. Events arrive. The mind speaks about them. That speech is not the event. It is an interpretation. Most people treat their interpretation as if it were reality itself. They say, this is terrible, and then they live inside terrible. They say, this is humiliating, and then they become a servant to humiliation. They say, this is a disaster, and their body floods with the urgency of disaster. But the event is simpler than the story. A message was not answered. A plan changed. Someone criticized you. You lost something. You were misunderstood. Your effort did not produce the result you wanted. These are externals. They have weight, but they do not have authority over your will unless you grant it. To become unshakable, you must learn to separate the raw fact from the added judgment. The mind will add its judgment quickly, with confidence, without asking permission. That is its habit. Habits are not laws. They can be retrained. When something happens, slow down the inner voice. Hear it like you would hear a stranger speaking too fast. Then ask, is this within my control? If not, stop arguing with it. Do not demand it become different before you allow yourself peace. That is a bargain you will lose every day. Instead, ask the next question. What remains within my control here? Your response remains. Your tone remains. Your honesty remains. Your restraint remains. Your effort remains. Your willingness to act properly remains. This is where strength lives, in what remains. Most people chase strength by trying to secure the outside. They try to control everyone's opinion, predict every outcome, remove every risk, guarantee every comfort. They call this planning. Often it is fear wearing neat clothes. Planning is reasonable. Attachment to plans is not. A plan is a tool. The mind that becomes unshakable uses tools without worshiping them. It builds, it prepares, it adjusts. It does not collapse when the tool is no longer suited to the moment. The shaking you fear is not always the event. It is your insistence that the event should not be happening. Look honestly, how often are you upset not because something is painful, but because it is inconvenient, unexpected, or insulting to your preferences? Preferences are not necessities. The mind becomes unshakable when it stops confusing desire with requirement. You may prefer approval, you may prefer ease, you may prefer certainty, You may prefer that people understand you and treat you fairly. These are natural preferences. But the weak mind turns preferences into demands, and every demand ties your peace to something you cannot command. Unshakable means, my peace depends on my judgment, not on your behavior. My stability depends on my choices, not on my luck. My dignity depends on my conduct, not on your applause. This is not coldness, it is clarity. If you are not careful, you will try to become unshakable by becoming numb. That is not strength. That is avoidance. Strength feels pain and remains ordered. Strength hears criticism and remains rational. Strength experiences loss and remains upright. Strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the refusal to let emotion become a ruler. Emotion is information about your current judgments and attachments. It is not a commandment. When you feel fear, you do not have to obey it. You examine it. You ask what it is protecting. Often it is protecting an image, a reputation, a fantasy of control. Fear often arises when the mind believes it must secure something outside itself to be safe. But safety is not found in securing externals. Externals can always be taken. Safety is found in knowing that what matters most cannot be taken. Your ability to choose what is right. This is the core of inner strength, the will aligned with reason. To become unshakable, you must become loyal to your own rational faculty, not loyal to comfort, not loyal to pleasure, not loyal to being admired, loyal to reason. Reason says, act with integrity even when it costs you. Reason says, speak truthfully even when it is inconvenient. Reason says, do not retaliate just because you feel insulted. Reason says, do your work without needing praise. Reason says, accept what happens without surrendering your responsibility. This is hard, not because it is complicated, but because desire hates to be denied. Desire wants relief now. Desire wants control now. Desire wants to be right now. Desire wants the discomfort to end, even if you must compromise your character. The undisciplined mind obeys desire and then wonders why it feels weak. It traded its own authority for temporary relief. You cannot buy strength with comfort. You buy it with practice. Practice happens in ordinary moments, not dramatic ones. A slow line at a store is practice. Someone cutting you off in traffic is practice. A colleague being unfair is practice. Your phone pulling your attention is practice. The urge to complain is practice. The impulse to check, refresh, compare, and seek reassurance is practice. In each moment, you either strengthen the mind or weaken it. You strengthen it by pausing before judgment becomes certainty. You strengthen it by choosing your response rather than reacting. You strengthen it by remembering what belongs to you. You weaken it by indulging every impulse. You weaken it by rehearsing grievances. You weaken it by feeding the appetite for validation. You weaken it by treating discomfort as an emergency. If you want to become unshakable, you must stop treating discomfort as a signal that something is wrong with life. Discomfort is often a signal that your attachment is being challenged. Attachment says, I need this to be a certain way. Life says it will not always be. You can respond with bitterness or with discipline. Bitterness is easy, it is passive. Discipline is active, it requires attention. The unshakable mind is not built by grand declarations. It is built by small refusals. Refuse to exaggerate. Refuse to speak harshly because you are irritated. Refuse to assume you know what others intend. Refuse to turn one setback into a prophecy. Refuse to let a single moment define your worth. Refuse to give your day to someone else's mood. Each refusal is a reinforcement. You are training the mind like you train a body. You do not become strong by reading about strength. You become strong by repeated resistance. And the resistance here is internal. It is the resistance against your own unexamined judgments. Most people believe the world is what shakes them. They do not see the inner hand that shakes itself. A comment arrives, they decide it is an attack. They tremble. A delay happens, they decide it is disrespect. They burn. A mistake occurs. They decide it means they are incompetent. They collapse. These are decisions, even if made quickly. They are judgments. You can choose differently. The comment can be information, or it can be noise. The delay can be a neutral fact, or it can be a personal insult. The mistake can be a lesson, or it can be a verdict on your identity. The event does not force the verdict. You do. To become unshakable, you must take responsibility for the verdict. This is not blame. It is ownership. Ownership gives power back to where it belongs, the mind. Now notice another subtle weakness. The desire to be unshakable can become vanity. You imagine yourself as someone who never flinches, never doubts, never feels. You chase an image of strength. Then you become anxious about appearing strong. That is still dependence on externals, on an identity, on an audience, on a performance. True inner strength is quieter. It allows the body to feel. It allows the mind to notice fear without panic. It allows you to admit uncertainty without shame. It does not require a mask. It requires honesty. Honesty begins with admitting how often you try to control what you cannot control, not with condemnation, but with clear observation. Watch yourself through a day. See how the mind reaches outward, trying to grip, trying to secure approval, trying to guarantee comfort, trying to avoid boredom, trying to escape silence, trying to be certain. Each reach outward is a confession. I do not trust what I control. I trust what I can get. The unshakable mind reverses this confession. I trust my faculty of choice. I trust my capacity to endure. I trust my ability to act properly. Endurance is not grimness. It is the acceptance that life includes friction. The mind that resents friction spends its strength fighting reality. The mind that accepts friction uses strength to act. When you stop fighting reality, you do not become passive, you become effective. Because you stop wasting energy on arguments with the inevitable. You stop asking, why is this happening? You ask, what is required of me now? This is a decisive shift. It takes you from complaint to conduct, from emotion to reason, from helplessness to agency. Agency does not mean controlling outcomes. It means controlling your contribution. If you are rejected, you can still respond with dignity. If you are misunderstood, you can still speak with clarity. If you are delayed, you can still practice patience. If you are praised, you can still remain humble. If you are tempted, you can still restrain yourself. The world cannot stop you from choosing virtue. It can inconvenience you. It can hurt you. It can threaten your comfort. It can take possessions. It can alter plans. But it cannot take the inner ability to judge rightly unless you surrender it. So the question becomes, what do you keep surrendering? You surrender it when you indulge anger as if it were justice. You surrender it when you chase pleasure as if it were fulfillment. You surrender it when you seek approval as if it were proof of worth. You surrender it when you avoid discomfort as if it were danger. Unshakable means I do not surrender the steering wheel. The mind that becomes unshakable treats itself like a steward. It guards its attention as if it were a valuable resource, because it is. Whatever you place attention on grows in influence. If you place attention on insults, you become easily insulted. If you place attention on fears, you become easily frightened. If you place attention on comparisons, you become easily diminished. If you place attention on reason, you become steady. This is why distraction is not a small problem. It is not a modern inconvenience. It is a surrender of the mind's rule. Each time you scatter your attention without choice, you train yourself to be moved by whatever appears. You become a leaf. You are carried. To become unshakable, you must become selective. Not because the world is evil, but because your mind is your responsibility. You cannot hold everything. You must decide what deserves the mind's energy. The unshakable mind gives energy to duties, to honest work, to careful speech, to the cultivation of character. It does not give energy to gossip, outrage, envy, or endless speculation. Speculation feels like control, but it is often just rehearsal of fear. When the mind imagines the worst repeatedly, it calls it preparedness. Often it is simply suffering in advance. True preparedness is simpler. It is the knowledge that you can meet whatever happens with reason. Not because you are invulnerable, but because you can choose. And if you can choose, you are never helpless. Now look at what it means to be unshakable in relationships. Many people believe others make them angry or make them anxious. They speak as if their mind is a room anyone can enter and rearrange. But anger is not poured into you. It is built in you by judgment. Someone speaks harshly. You decide you are disrespected. You decide disrespect must be punished. Anger rises to protect that decision. Someone withdraws affection. You decide you are unworthy. You decide you need them to feel whole. Anxiety rises to chase what you believe you need. These are beliefs. The unshakable mind questions beliefs before it obeys them. It says, is it true that I need this person's approval to be at peace? Is it true that I must retaliate to preserve dignity? Is it true that being disliked is unbearable? Is it true that being alone is a failure? Is it true that my worth depends on another mind? Each time you answer with reason, you loosen the chains. Then you can love without clinging. You can care without fear. You can be close without being controlled. This is strength in human form. You do not become indifferent. You become free. Freedom is not doing what you want. Desire is not freedom. Desire is a leash. Freedom is wanting what reason permits. Freedom is refusing what reason forbids. Freedom is being able to endure the absence of what you prefer without losing yourself. When you can endure, you stop bargaining. You stop saying, I will be calm if you become calm because calm is yours to choose. Now consider failure. Failure shakes people because they fuse their identity to outcomes. They say, if I succeed, I am worthy. If I fail, I am nothing. This is a fragile arrangement. Outcomes depend on many variables: luck, timing, other people, circumstances, health. If you attach worth to outcomes, you attach worth to chance. Chance is not a stable foundation. The unshakable mind attaches worth to effort guided by reason. It says, did I act properly? Did I prepare as well as I could? Did I remain honest? Did I keep my character intact? If yes, then even if you lose, you have not been defeated where it matters. If no, then the loss is not tragedy, it is instruction. Strength uses failure as a teacher, not as a judge. There is no need for despair. Despair is just the mind insisting that a single event has the authority to define the whole self. It does not. Only your choices define you. A disciplined mind does not fear failure as much because it does not treat failure as identity. It treats it as feedback. And because it treats it as feedback, it can remain calm and improve. This is why the unshakable person learns faster. Not because they are more gifted, but because their ego is not constantly defending itself. Ego is a fragile guard. It panics and attacks. Reason is a steady guide. It adjusts. Now we come to the deepest source of strength, acceptance of impermanence. Everything external changes. Bodies age. Relationships evolve. Opportunities appear and vanish. Reputation shifts. Money comes and goes. Health fluctuates. To demand permanence from changing things is to create constant anxiety. You will always be bracing for loss. The unshakable mind does not pretend things will last. It does not brood over loss either. It simply sees the nature of externals. They pass, so it enjoys without clinging. It uses without worshiping. It appreciates without needing guarantees. This creates gratitude that is rational, not sentimental. Gratitude for what is present now, without the demand that it remain forever. When you can hold things lightly, you stop fearing their departure as a catastrophe. Their departure is part of their nature. You can still feel sadness, but sadness does not have to become collapse. Collapse happens when you tell yourself, I cannot endure this. Strength says, this is painful, and I will endure it with dignity. Now, what does becoming unshakable look like in a day? It looks like the pause between stimulus and response. It looks like swallowing a sharp word and choosing a measured one. It looks like continuing your work when no one notices. It looks like admitting fault without self-hatred. It looks like receiving praise without swelling. It looks like being corrected without humiliation. It looks like waiting without complaining. It looks like having an impulse and not acting on it. These are quiet victories. They do not trend. They do not announce themselves. They do not give instant pleasure. But they build a mind that cannot be thrown around easily. Because what shakes you is not the world. It is the lack of internal rule. To rule yourself, you must keep returning to the same discipline. When an impression arrives, do not believe it immediately. When desire pulls, do not obey it immediately. When fear warns, do not kneel immediately. Examine, choose, act. This is the entire practice. Do not complicate it. You will be tested, not once, but continually. Not because life is against you, but because life is change, and change presses on weak attachments. Each test is an invitation, not to prove yourself, to train yourself. When you fail, do not add drama. Drama is another escape from reason. Simply return. Return to the question, what is within my control? Return to the boundary, my judgment, my choice, my conduct. Return to the aim, to act according to reason. That aim is enough. If you keep this aim, your mind becomes less dependent on external order. Then when the world is calm, you are calm. And when the world is chaotic, you are calm. Not because you have numbed yourself, because you have placed your peace where chaos cannot reach. This is inner strength. It is not a fortress built from stone. It is a clear mind built from practice. And practice is always available. Right now, even as you listen, the mind may be reaching outward, looking for reassurance, looking for certainty, looking for a feeling. Bring it back. The only certainty you need is this. You can choose your next judgment. You can choose your next act. You can choose to meet this moment with reason. Everything else is borrowed. Do not build your life on borrowed things. Build it on what is yours. Peace comes from holding only what belongs to you and releasing what never did.